Hello there, and welcome to What If Yoda Didn't Die in Return of the Jedi. On Dagobah, the swamp hummed like a living heart. Luke had come and gone, a blur of concern, impatience, and the stubborn hope that reminded Yoda at once of Anakin and of the boy's mother. The old master lay on his straw pallet and listened to his own breath stagger in his chest like a tired animal. In the true timeline, this would be the last sound Yoda heard as a living being. He closed his eyes, ready to surrender, but as the darkness pressed in, the Force pressed back. It came not as a whisper this time, but as a tide. Faces flickered across his inner sight. Luke bound before the Emperor's throne. Leia in camouflage, running through ferns. Han shouting for a code cylinder he didn't have. Chewbacca seizing the controls of an AT-ST with a delighted roar, Lando rolling the Falcon in tighter than sane pilots flew, Akbar despairing, Wedge steady as stone. Beyond them, and brighter than them, the black figure of Darth Vader, and behind him, like a shadow that had learned to laugh, the Emperor. Yoda saw something else too, a thin silver line stretching forward, taut as a bowstring, tugging him forward. Not a command, a question. Must you die now? He drew a breath, then another. The shaking in his limbs eased as he exhaled. The hut's hanging chimes settled from their frantic clink into a single low note that lingered without fading. Not finished, I am, he said to the empty room. And the room, the swamp, the world seemed to answer, no. He pivoted from surrender into discipline. The meditation he entered was deeper than sleep, slower than death. He gathered strength not from muscle, but from the river that had carried him since he was a youngling in a temple whose stones were now dust. Hours passed, or days. Time on Dagobah was a creature that did not fetch when called. When he stood, his cane felt lighter. So did he. Another lesson I must teach, he murmured, and another choice, help make. He reached into the currents of the Force and sent a thought along a path known to only two. Obi-Wan's presence stirred into the luminous field just beyond sight. The ghost took form by the hearth, blue and sorrowful. You're staying, Obi-Wan said, both statement and question. For now, Yoda said, but not for long. This web, tangled it is, only with both hands, untangle we can. The ghost smiled. Then let's go, where the knot is tied. A small ancient starfighter lifted from the swamp as if the water itself were tired of holding it. Yoda sat cocooned in the cockpit, fingers small on the controls. He flew without haste and without fear, letting the currents choose the smoothest void between patrols and sensors. The Empire did not see him. It was too busy seeing itself. When his craft slipped in the shadow of an Imperial shuttle near the forest moon of Endor, a curious thing occurred. The shuttle's sensors, bores blinked, saw him, then forgot they had seen him. A bored crewman slapped the console. Another ghost ping, he muttered. Yoda's eyes closed in concern. Cloaking a presence in the Force was easier when the target did not believe in ghosts. He settled into the ship's wake like a leaf on a river and rode it all the way to the hangar bay of Death Star 2. Stormtroopers lined the deck in sterile rows. Lord Vader descended the ramp with Luke Skywalker walking beside him, wrists bound but shoulders squared. Vader's gaze scanned the hangar as if searching for a noise he thought he had heard long ago. The noise didn't come. The little green figure on a service gantry above did not move. Welcome, young Skywalker, an officer sneered. You will find that Lord Vader is not as forgiving as Emperor Palpatine. Luke didn't answer. He didn't need to. Somewhere above, the Force tasted like rain on dusty stone. He kept his face still. Below the shield generator on Endor, Leia crouched beside Han with her hand on his arm, feeling the muscle jump as he tried to will a code cylinder into existence. Imperial boots clattered somewhere above. R2-D2 beeped a frantic protest. The little droid's scomplink sparked. Great, Han growled. "A billion-credit bunker, and the door uses the only key in the galaxy our droid doesn't have," Chewbacca murmured, low and puzzled. There was a hush in the trees, like the breath before thunder. Leia pressed her ear to the earth without knowing why. She felt it too. Something shifting. Far away, but powerful. "Okay," Han said. "New plan." Ewok horns sang, high and wild. The forest boiled. Stormtroopers spun, shouting, just as a net whipped from the shadows and yanked two of them into the trees. A scale-armored Ewok riding a stolen speeder bike howled past, firing wildly. The bunker garrison panicked, as intended. Chewbacca lunged, arms out, and caught a blaster thrown by an Ewok, who had no business knowing how to throw a blaster that well. Leia moved first. Han followed, because he always followed Leia when she moved first. The fight for the door began, again with the fresh chaos, which was the rebellion's favorite weather. In space, the fleet shuddered against the hard reality of, "It's a trap." Admiral Akbar's command voice steadied 1,000 hearts. Lando and the Falcon threaded the impossible needle between the Star Destroyer's hungry prongs. Wedge's astromech screamed. Wedge told it to be brave and punched the throttle away. Something subtle shifted. It wasn't much. An edge, as if it frayed nervous smoothed one by one, like a conductor coaxing a panicked orchestra into tempo. Gunners tracked more cleanly. Pilots trusted wingmen a hair more than they feared death. Orders came out cleaner. Responses came back faster. In a dozen languages, the same thing happened. People had no business surviving started to. None of them knew why. Akbar didn't. Lando didn't. Wedge didn't. But Luke would have recognized the pattern. Yoda was using the Force not to throw ships or shatter hulls. That was the Emperor's style. But to knit. To gather courage where it lacked. To calm hands that shook. To tune a fleet into a single instrument that could play the one song the galaxy needed. Battle meditation, legends called it. Yoda had never liked the term. This wasn't manipulation, it was recognition. Of each pilot's strength, each gunner's hope, each tech's stubborn refusal to lose. He amplified what was already there and gave it back to them. Palpatine sat on his throne like a spider gathering dew. Luke climbed the steps in cuffs. Vader loomed. The Emperor purred. Temptation spilled like oil. And then the room noticed it was not alone. It started as a pressure on the wall, the way an old house knows when someone leans against it. Then a shadow separated from the rafters. The guards stirred. Vader's head snapped up. Luke's heart jumped and steadied. Yoda dropped to the floor without a sound and stood with his cane like a farmer posing on a road. He regarded the throne as if it were a badly carved statue. "Age has not improved your taste," he said. Palpatine rose slowly. The yellow in his eyes brightened until irises were almost gone. "I killed you," he said, each word a knife. "On the day you ran from me, you died. This is not possible." "Possible and true are not the same thing," Yoda said, and tapped his cane. The knock echoed like a bell. Vader took a half step backward and froze there. A gesture so small, no one but Luke noticed. Palpatine's smile was thin. "Then let us finish what you fled." He raised his hands. Lightning gathered between his fingers with a crack like ice breaking on a river. The guards reached for their force spikes. Yoda's cane thumped once. All 4 red guards dropped asleep before they hit marble. Luke didn't understand the trick. Vader did. Behind the mask, a memory tugged. A temple training room. A much younger Anakin yawning and waking on the floor with a blanket pulled over him. Master Yoda seated nearby reading without a book. He had called it noise to quiet. He had meant mercy. "You came to die," Palpatine said. "No," Yoda said, and let the cane fall. His hand opened. The green blade sprang alive with a sound older than the Empire. "Came to end dying. I did." The Emperor's lightning leapt. Yoda's blade took it, drank it, sent it down into the floor where the stone crackled but held. Luke felt the air on his arm lift as the air itself charged. Vader stood motionless. conflict, a storm under the armor. The duel was not like the one in the Senate years before. Palpatine had fed for 2 decades on fear like a king on meat. He was stronger. Yoda had fed on the living force and on humility. He was wiser. Power slammed against wisdom and did not break it. Yoda did not try to overpower the lightning. A Jedi won by refusing a false contest. He changed angles, stepped sideways in rhythm humans could not see, and made lightning chase the absence until it guttered. When cities twisted into lunge with a blade crackling red, a toy he rarely needed, Yoda met it in a tight circle of parries that burned Vader's old muscle memory. For 3 heartbeats, Vader was 12 years old again, losing to Green Blade and laughing because he could not imagine a future where they would fight for real. "You have grown weak," the Emperor hissed. "Old," Yoda agreed. "Weak in cruelty." His blade slipped, just so, and cut the Emperor's sleeve without touching flesh. A warning. A map. Palpatine abandoned finesse. Lightning roared. Yoda's stance widened. He sank as if into earth, rooted as a tree. "Look at him," Palpatine shouted at Luke, because he could not stand an audience that did not love his suffering. "This fossil, this is what you follow? This? Strike your father down and claim your birthright, or die with the last relic of a dead faith." Luke could have answered. He did not get the chance. Yoda did something very simple. He looked at Vader. Not the mask, not the machine. The man. His eyes softened. Not pity. Never pity, but recognition. "Anakin," he said. The room went very quiet. Palpatine's lightning faltered. Just a fraction, because he knew names were not nothing. Yoda pointed the tip of his blade at the floor and lowered his head, presenting the back of his neck in the oldest gesture of trust. "This one cannot hold forever," he said. Not to the Emperor, not to Luke, to Anakin. Choose. Vader's breath hitched. Anakin's name had not been a kindness in years. It had been a whip, a sneer, a reminder of failure. Hearing it like this, as if he were still accessible, as if he were still welcome, broke something that needed to break. Luke saw the shift like a changing gravity. He saw his father's shoulders drop, as if the armor had gained weight. And then he saw his father lift that weight like a man lifting his child. "Enough," Vader said, his saber ignited with a howl. Palpatine turned, triumphant, believing for a fraction of a second that the blade was meant for Yoda or for Luke. And so, he did not sense the strike until it pierced him cleanly from behind. Pain shot through his spine and became a scream. Yoda rose into a leap that was mostly a thought, and when he landed, his blade was through the Emperor's heart. Light and shadow collided in a crack that silenced the battle above for one stunned breath. The throne shattered, the lightning died, the air smelled like rain after fire. Darth Sidious sagged, slid from the blades, and fell. For the first time in a generation, there was no Sith Master in the galaxy. Vader stood swaying. Luke was at his side before the saber stopped humming, catching his father as a child catches a falling branch. "Luke," Anakin said, because he was now Anakin. "I'm sorry." "I know," Luke said, choking on tears he had not wanted to show. "It's enough." Anakin's breath rattled like old paper. The Emperor's lightning had ravaged the life support systems, and the Emperor's death had taken the hate that kept the wounds from mattering. Yoda knelt. He did not try to stop death. Jedi did not trap souls in broken houses. But he did ease passage. His hand, small, three-fingered, calloused, rested where flesh met iron. He sent comfort, not as a drug that dulled pain, but as a lamp that seeded a path. "Free, you are," he said softly. "Home, you will go." Anakin looked at him. Really looked, with his eyes that saw faces instead of targets. "I failed you," he whispered. "Failed yourself, you did," Yoda said. "And returned yourself. You have." He nodded at Luke, helped by love. Through the hole in the destroyed wall, Endor's sky streaked with green fire and the hard white lines of turbo lasers. The Death Star groaned. Time shrank. Luke reached for the helmet. "You don't have to," Yoda began. "I want to see him," Luke said. "Not the mask. Him." The locks released to a sigh. Air kissed burnt skin. Anakin's face was every contradiction at once. Ruined and gentle, old and young, monstrous and human. He smiled at his son, and at the friend who had once scolded him for climbing rafters in the temple. "Tell your sister," he began, and faltered. "She knows," Luke said. "She always knew." Anakin nodded. "Good." His gaze turned, curious, to a space beside Yoda where nothing visible stood. Obi-Wan's ghost, luminous, smiled through tears that were not water. Anakin smiled back. "Master," he said to both of them, because the word fit them both in different ways. His chest rose once more, then rested. The Force sighed and took him in. Luke bowed his head. Yoda put a hand on the boy's shoulder, and together they rose. "Go," Yoda said. "Fly. Finish what others began." "What about you?" Luke asked. "Catch up, I will," Yoda said. "A small ship I have. A small master, also." Luke laughed despite himself, kissed his father's brow, and ran. Endor celebrated with drums, with stolen helmets, with collision-scarred walkers turned into swings. Ewok children rode stormtrooper armor like sleds down mossy hills. Hand-kissed Leia in the dark between two tree trunks, interrupted politely by 3 Ewoks and impolitely by 1 particle droid. Chewbacca slept for the first time in 2 days like a felled tree. Luke slipped away. He carried weight down a slope to a clearing where the ferns were templed in a ring. He laid the armor on a pyre and stood with a torch. He hesitated. Yoda stepped from the trees and took the torch from his hand. "Together we do this," he said. "Not alone." They lit the pyre. Flame ran quick and clean. Smoke rose. Somewhere beyond the night, noises, a laugh that was not mocking, rippled in the leaves. And for a moment, just a moment, a young man in a braid and a cocky grin leaned with his back against a tree. At peace. Luke stood between the master who had survived and the father who had returned to the light. The heat made his eyes water. He did not wipe them. "Thank you," he said. "Grief and gratitude. Both," Yoda murmured. "Hold both. Be broken and be whole. At once." Leia came then, silent as the moon, and took her brother's hand. She glanced at Yoda with the quick measure of a stateswoman and the open curiosity of a student. Yoda bowed to her as if to a queen. "Much to learn, you have," he said, smiling. "From you?" she asked. "From yourself," he said. "But help, I will." Word of the Emperor's death moved through the galaxy like a weather change. On some worlds, fireworks. On others, gunfire. Star Destroyer captains argued with Moffs about succession. Stormtroopers realized they had spent their youth for a man whose name would now be a curse. ISB agents burned files and then burned the buildings that had held the files. On Coruscant, people looked up from ration lines and felt something like air in their lungs. Mon Mothma's voice, calm as a sunrise, addressed 1,000 systems. "The Emperor is dead. The Empire is not the law. We are. Return to your councils. Choose your leaders. The New Republic will help you stand." Behind the speech, the rumor bloomed. The Jedi had come back. Not one Jedi, the Jedi. Ancient, small, unkillable. Soldiers told each other the story and added the details that made stories true. That Yoda had waved and whole platoons had fallen asleep. That he had stopped lightning with his hand. That he had whispered to ships and they had flown better because they wanted to make him proud. Most of it was wrong. All of it was right. There was no Senate to walk into. Palpatine had dissolved it years ago. So Yoda did not stride into a chamber and make a speech. He would not have anyway. He sat instead in the borrowed room on Chandrila with an open window that looked into a field where children chased a ball and fell down, and got up and argued happily about rules that kept changing. Mon Mothma arrived with a cadre of aides. She dismissed the aides with a look. She sat on the floor, so her eyes were level, and folded her hands. "I didn't believe you were real," she said. "Real enough," Yoda said. "We need you," she said. "Need yourself, you do," Yoda said, and the kindness in it steadied her more than agreement would have. "Jedi rule not. Guide we may. Interfere we must not." "I don't want you to rule," she said, almost laughing. "I want you to help us not become what we overthrew." She hesitated. "I fought the Emperor for years, but even he did some things more efficiently than a legislator can. There will be pressure to consolidate." Yoda's ears dipped in a nod. "Temptation of speed," he said. "Common it is. The dark side's shortest route. Always. Walk slow, you must. When quick is easy." They talked for an hour. They made no laws. They made something better. A habit of asking each other the question that prevents empires. Luke's training resumed because it never should have stopped. But it did not resume alone. Leia arrived with a fury of dispatches tucked under her arm and an expression that dared anyone to tell her she could not do two impossible jobs at once. Yoda did not tell her that. He told her a story about a Padawan who had believed she could not laugh and study on the same day. "Bored, the Force becomes, if only one thing you are," he said. "Balance, not boredom." He taught them differently. Luke carried power like a river that sometimes forged its banks. Yoda taught him containers, breath, patience, ritual. He made Luke fish again, not for food this time, but for humility. "The galaxy saved is not because you want it," he said, "because you let it." Leia carried power like a wire, conductive, precise, lethal if mishandled. Yoda taught her ground, empathy that did not melt into pity, boundaries that did not harden into walls. He taught her to reach into a negotiation and find, without touching, the precise place. One word would change a war. When she sparred, he would make her switch hands. Politics with a saber, he called it. She rolled her eyes and beat Luke anyway. Sometimes, late, after councils and training and a meal shared with pilots who loved their princess because she was a soldier too, Leia would sit with Yoda and ask about her mother. Yoda told her of a senator who had argued with him as stubbornly as Leia did, and of a queen who had walked in front of a convoy because she did not believe fear deserved a road. Leia listened with a hunger that surprised her. Would she be proud? Leia asked once. Not of herself. Of the choices she made that might break people she had never met. "Pride," Yoda said, "is not the right measure. Trust is. Would she trust you?" "Yes." Leia nodded. It was enough. The galaxy's hunger for Jedi outran the Jedi supply. Hollow News asked, how many knights will there be? Which worlds will get them? Will the Jedi serve as diplomats? Judges? Soldiers? Custodians of temples looted by Imperials? The answer to all of it, at first, was no. Learn first, Yoda told the galaxy. Heal, you must. A weapon the Jedi Order will not be again. But he did not leave the hunger unaddressed. He and Luke began something both smaller and larger than a refounded order. They called it a circle, not a school. They invited children who saw what others did not, and also farmers who knew when to harvest by smell, and engineers who heard when a hyperdrive wanted to fail, and medics whose hands soothed before they stitched. They taught them to listen to themselves. A few would become Jedi, many would become exactly what they already were, only clearer. On Kashyyyk, Chewbacca met Yoda again and laughed so loudly that 3 birds fell out of a tree in shock. On Lothal, a boy and a girl passed each other in a market and both turned because something like a song had brushed them. On Jakku, a scavenger child felt the air thicken a heartbeat before the ceiling fell and stepped aside without thinking. Yoda did not find all of them. He didn't need to. The point was that they would find each other. The Empire did not evaporate because the throne was empty. Warlords carved swatches of space into little empires with big names. An ISB director with more ambition than sense declared himself regent. A captain with more sense than ambition turned off his ship's transponders and went home. The New Republic's navy fought skirmishes that lasted minutes and campaigns that lasted months. The cost was brutal. Freedom always charged in Erissus. Yoda helped in ways that left little record. He went where fear puddled and spoke softly until it drained. He sat with fighters who could not sleep and taught them a breath that was not an order. He visited a world where children had learned to fear their own questions and told a joke so old it had grown new again. Once, on a scattered moon where stormtroopers armored lit a ridge like shells after a tide, he and Luke faced an Inquisitor who had somehow outlived the Emperor's need for secrets. The Inquisitor came with a blade that spun like a lie and with eyes that had forgotten how to cry. "You are relics," he told them, sneering. "The future belongs to men who make it." Luke deflected the first furious rush and sent the second into a dust. Yoda watched, correcting Luke's stance once with a word. When it was over, when the Inquisitor lay alive and unarmed, his jaw trembled. Yoda walked to him, knelt with creaking knees, and put a hand on the man's shoulder. "Stop making your future," he said. "Start listening to it." It was not absolution, but it was the beginning of mercy. Some of the worst soldiers of the Dead Empire learned to become citizens because a small old being asked them a question no court would. The night the New Republic signed its first charter on Chandrila, a million little celebratory lights lined the hills. Fireworks went up like flowers that decided to be loud, hand danced terribly and delightfully. Lando told a story that got better with every retelling and would be unrecognizable the next year. Wedge toasted a list of dead that he read until he couldn't read and then kept speaking their names anyway. Chewbacca stole 2 whole roasted birds and shared them with 9 children, and 1 very determined astromech. Leia walked away from the party for a while and found a hill without lights. Luke found her because that's what brothers do. They stood without speaking, watching a sky at peace. Yoda joined them. He did not need a cane tonight. The Force lent him a step. He looked at his students, at his grandchildren in duty, and said nothing for a long time. Silence was a lesson too. When he did speak, it was as if he was finishing a sentence he had started on a swamp pallet. "Die. I was meant to," he said. "But live. I did. Why? Not to fight for you. To stay for you. To be an old thing in a new world until the world did not need an old thing to believe in the new." Leia took his hand. Luke put his hand over Leia's. A small pile of hands, absurd against a galaxy, and more than enough. A wind moved through the grass. It smelled like rain with no storm coming. High above, for those who knew how to look, 3 lights stood for a moment shoulder to shoulder. Obi-Wan's calm humor, Anakin's hard-won peace, and a fiercer, older fire that had burned since before the Republic's knew its name. Yoda did not turn his head. He did not need to. He knew who kept watch. "Endings," he said. Not to them, not to himself, but to the air that would carry the words to anyone who needed them. Are only places to rest. He looked down the slope as the city where the charter was being signed, at the trees where the kids hid to eat stolen sweets, at the sky that held room for every ship that would ever leave home and try to make another. He smiled, the deep, crinkled grin that had terrified cadets and soothed infants. "Begin," he said, and the galaxy did. And that is it for What If Yoda Didn't Die in Return of the Jedi. Longer, well, this What If is on the longer side. It's like 4,500 words, half an hour video, right about there. So yeah, but if you guys enjoyed it, make sure to subscribe, like the video, and notifications on. We do post a Star Wars what if every single Thursday and Sunday of every single week. Also, do make sure to join our Discord server. Link is in the description, where we talk everything from Star Wars, video games, movies, and more. And we are trying to expand our community over there. Join the Patreon as well. Link is in the description if you want to support the channel and get exclusive perks while doing so. And yeah, once again, honestly, I really love this what if. The plot kind of actually ends like in the middle of it or somewhere around there, but I still continue to what if on and expand on the story and the ending and talk about what happens more after Palpatine's death, which I really like. So let me know what you guys think about that part of the story. And again, please do subscribe. I really enjoy this what if. I think it's one of my best ones as well, and it is definitely the best thumbnail ever. But hey, my name is Mr. Vols, and I hope that you enjoyed this video. Between the pulse of light and shadowed breath, there lies a place where time forgets itself, not bound by what has been nor what must come, but by the faintest whisper of choice. A single thread pulled and the galaxy bends. Here, destinies twist like sparks in the void. Heroes falter, villains rise, and every path you thought was certain shivers and fractures, revealing the infinite could have beens. Step closer, listen to the silent echoes. Every star you see could burn another way. Every shadow could hide a truth unseen. And in this space, your imagination is the only limit. Welcome to the place where what if reigns. Hey, you didn't watch it? Well, check out the video on the left side of the screen, which is specifically recommended for you, or check out the playlist on the right of the screen, which contains similar videos to this one, made by me, of course. Hey, remember to subscribe.